Welcome back to Watchbox Studios and watches tonight. I can see our live audience joining us from around the world already.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian, and thank you for logging on.
Oh, well, hi there. Hi, welcome. Welcome back to another episode of the Trading Desk.
Okay, I should mention something about these category busters, and it's something we haven't addressed so far, which is that often they are real haute de gamme rarities, super exotics, like the extrovert offerings from HYT, that's the H20, and De Bethune, that's the kind of blue tourbillon, Milky Way. Basically, these are awesome pieces that serve no sporting purpose, and they're barely water resistant. Plus, it's hard to describe them as dress watches by any standards other than perhaps this attire. I think you can consider the HYT a dress watch if your suit looks like this. Now, I kid because I love HYT and De Bethune both. MB&F followed this path, the exotic watch you can't classify, with the 2017 HM7 Aquapod. Count the contradictions. It's called the Aquapod. It looks like a jellyfish. It's got a unidirectional rotating dive-style bezel, and yet it's only 50 meters water resistant, and it is no dive watch. Now that we've established a pattern of fabulous and fatuous absurdity, let me pigeonhole one specific brand that does this better than anyone and does it from the United States, no less. The weird and the wonderful Devon Tread pair. The Tread 1 and the Tread 2. Jumping straight into watches that push the limits of, well, what a watch is, period. They push the definition of the word watch and our sense of what a watch should be. So trying to pin down the watch genre for these California-built beasts is almost theater of the absurd. And I could see Zucker saying that our vision is absurd. We've got a lively chat box. Jason Main, by the way, in the chat box from our own shop in there answering your questions about prices and our watches. But let's talk about the Devon one more time, because although aggressive, large, techy, and bold in the very American sense that a Tesla Model S with ludicrous mode is bold, these are not sports watches. For one thing, the Tread 2 was the first water-resistant Devon at a whopping 1 ATM or 10 meters, and the original Tread 1 was rated to a pocket watch-worthy 0 ATM, no water resistance. Given the sheer size and microelectronics questions posed by this kind of timepiece, and maybe that's the best way to describe it, it is a timepiece. It is a piece that tells time. Basic queries, then, about dress watch or sports watch classification seem almost ridiculous. The Tread 2 chronograph, I should say, by their standards, is fairly restrained, and I'm a big fan of the Motown Nights models. I love the black, I love the blue, I love the white, I love the music, and I love the theme of that 50-piece limited edition. But the Tread 1 starts at a full boil. This one starts at 11 and goes to numbers that even Spinal Tap never conceived. Quickly probes the limit of sanity with the steampunk model. And the Star Wars. Finally, there is the clinically insane exoskeleton model. Once you've aligned your models with Jules Verne in the case of the steampunk, and, well, Darth Vader, no explanation required, classification is futile. You could call these personal devices, consumer electronics, or even adult toys. All three apply, but these watches are cool, and I'm a big fan of what Devon is doing. The motor-driven time belt displays are visually distinctive and both visually and audibly loud. You can hear this watch from across a room over the din of speech, and I love that. Production is low at about 1,500 pieces yearly, so roughly on par with Moser. 2/3 are Tread 2s, 1/3 the flagship Tread 1, and there's a refreshing lack of pretense about the brand that I like and sorely miss when I'm dealing with traditional luxury brands, especially Swiss brands. They're not trying to ride the coattails of some astroturfed, reimagined, or reheated heritage dating back to the 18th century. These Devons are modern-day Americana for watch guys, and I embrace that. If you weren't alive to remember Elvis, tail fins, Joe DiMaggio, or Muhammad Ali at peak, get a Devon Tread. I can't remember any of the foregoing, therefore I am a Tread fan.
So guys, please keep the questions coming. I think we've got time for one more watch. Why don't we do the BMG Tech?
Yeah, okay.
So Tim will explain a little bit about this watch. This is a watch that when they first came out with it was actually quite difficult for Panerai to deliver. They let out very few. We're starting now to see a few more. You've got a BMG Tech Submersible with a bright blue dial, blue rubber strap, and Tim will talk a little bit more about why this watch is so special.
Yeah, 47 millimeters in BMG alloy. We'll talk about what that is. It's a big Luminor Submersible 1950. We first saw this watch at SIHH in 2017, and it felt like we didn't see it again for another year. It's extraordinary on a couple of levels. First is the material itself, which is an alloy of aluminum, nickel, titanium, zirconium, and copper. And it's difficult to see in isolation, but it's easier to see in relation to the case back. There is a very different hue and tone to this main metal that comprises the case, the bezel, as well as the crown guard. It's almost like titanium, but with a little bit of a red or underlying yellow tone. Now the dial is a luscious gloss blue like you would see on an extravagant Rolex white gold Submariner Smurf, and that is an unusual look for Panerai. The advantage of the BMG Tech is clear. It's lighter than steel, I can tell you that because in the hand it's lighter than steel, and it's also very scratch resistant because the actual molecular structure of it is a little bit chaotic and unaligned. It doesn't have the vaguely crystalline order that you normally get on metals. It's actually flash frozen after it's cast into this form, so you get a lot of scratch resistance, shock resistance, dent resistance, and a much lighter overall watch because of the alloy composition. It's a big piece too. At 47 millimeters, I'm not gonna lie. The look is huge. It's the diving equivalent of an IWC Big Pilot and almost as broad across the wrist, but it's not terribly thick. 3-day automatic movement, it's only 15 millimeters thick. It's a timepiece that stretched Panerai to the breaking point, and that's really something when you consider that Panerai has done ceramic, titanium, steel, gold, platinum. It's even done composite alloys. So this is a very interesting metal. It looks different, it feels different, and qualitatively, because it is so scratch resistant, it works differently too. One last thing about the dial, it has bigger indices than previous submersibles. So if you compare this to something like a 305, it is easier to see by day, it's easier to see by night. That's the BMG Tech PAM 692.
So, and how do you think it polishes? Like, do you think that you can polish it with normal techniques, or do you think it has, it would have to go back to the brand?
I would rather it go back to the brand. That's always my preference. I would say realistically...
Probably polishes like steel, don't you think?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. If it's very hard, it might have a tendency to chip or pit. So
that's one of the downfalls of ceramic, obviously. Yeah. Again, on something like this is that if you scratch it or do anything to it, it just can't be.
It has.
Polished
I
out.
think it could be, but I would do it factory. It probably requires tools that will not wear down on it. It has a very high percentage of zirconium in the alloy. So my thought is a conventional finisher would not want to wear out his tools on that. I would leave it to the factory because they have the equipment and they've probably done it before. I would say just unless you dent it or something. Don't do any refinishing.
Yeah,
just leave it as is.
We always recommend to just,
it's a Panerai.
Live with it.
And since we're doing watches from last night, let's do one more. This is a treat for you guys who love complications.
You've been wanting to talk about this watch all day. I mean, every time you would go and reach for it, I would say one of the other ones just to get to you.
The reason is because this is not a watch we own. So here's a watch that I love. I can't be bought, I can be charmed. This is the Reservoir Cars Series Supercharged Classic. It's designed to look like a vintage instrument, so a tachometer or a speedometer from a 60s car. The nice thing about it is it's actually a Swiss-made watch with a module by Telos SA. Those are the people who made the Harry Winston Opus 14, and the module gives it a power reserve, a jump hour, and a retrograde, and it works beautifully. Let me show you just how this thing works because it's a hell of a lot of fun. This is like instant gratification if you love retrogrades. They're usually dates, which I hate because you're never watching in the middle of the night on the 31st when the date retrogrades. Here, you can just play with this thing all day and even has a patent so you can't accidentally damage it and turn it backwards. Every time you jump the hour, it's like a little piece of horological theater. And then there's the power reserve down at the bottom. So you get a retrograde, a jump hour, and a power reserve all in an automatic watch. And again, the module is designed by Telos and the watch is made in La Chaux de Fonds. So it has an impressive pedigree for a thing from a brand that's only 2 years old. It's a French brand like Bell & Ross. It's a French brand. They design in France. They build in Switzerland. Again, kind of like Bell & Ross. I'm a big fan of that thing. 43 millimeters. It sells for under $4,000. And on top of that, they give you a 3-year warranty. Patek.
if he's a very clean kind of like architectural individual, I think this watch works.
If he has an office job.
Yeah, it's a very
great
much a
everyday
9 to 5 type of watch, but for the type of person that's very analytical and very calm mannered, it's not a watch that I think you're strapping your wrist and going out to the bar or going. This is very much a kind of work casual type of watch. Yeah.
Well, so if you have a friend who's an engineer, something like that, who like is into mechanics,
Appreciates
but also
the little fine details, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a watch you can stare at the movement all the time, and so all day long. Price point pre-owned, you can find that for like $3,500 or less. So that's going to be in the top end range of all these watches here, but it's also by far the most finished movement.
Yes.
So Nomos is a good way to go too. Yeah, if you have somebody who's a little bit more straight laced and is not a party animal, is not like a sports guy or whatever, that's a fantastic watch to get them into.
Pretty much the opposite of this watch.
Right. So this watch is
the other side of the
Tudor Black
spectrum,
Bay, right?
So yeah, Tudor Black Bay.
So if your guy likes Rolex,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, for a guy that likes the styling of Rolex but doesn't quite understand what Rolex is or why it costs what it costs, wants something that is a good starting point, or you're a guy that has all the for me this is a kind of a fair player because you can have Rolexes and then have this watch. It doesn't compete one on one, so this is versatile. This is a good type of watch where you can give him this and this will start him, but it doesn't have to leave the collection once he's done.
Yeah.
Because it can stick around. It's versatile. But this is the opposite. So this is, you can wear this all the time. It's sporty. It can be a little dressy on this strap with the distress, but solid movement, nothing to look at. It's, closed case back as opposed to the Nomos, which, the smoke
watch.
show is on the back of the, with the exhibition case back.
Oh, yeah.
But, this is pretty much your awesome tool watch for, call it sub $3,000.
This is probably the most civilized chat box I've seen since we started this. Everyone's like, hey guys, nice watches. Because it's true, because no matter how much you can spend, whatever you can afford, if you're buying Pateks, if you're buying Longas and Richard Milles even, you can, if you like watches, these are all watches that you can,
wait
for the
until
most
they
part,
see what's in here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we got to hurry this up too.
All right.
So you have a tool watch from a company that's basically derived from Rolex. So that's also a good entry level. Let's run through these pretty quickly. We'll leave this one to last because I know it's your
Bell & Ross.
Yeah, I like Bell & Ross. I got a few.
The first time I started shelling out watches in some great number was Bell & Ross. I was selling 5, 6, 7 Bell & Rosses a week.
Yeah. Special
editions, limited editions, all these pieces. So this is the, I guess kind of hard to see on the black. So that's the 0192, so the original 46 millimeter case, which nowadays most people like the
42.
The 40, the
I got the
03
43
case.
diver. It's nice.
But the 01 was nice because it was the first piece that actually had like a legitimate 2-piece case. So this is the OG. This is with the yellow's a limited edition.
Yeah, is that like a East Coast limited edition or something? I know that was like a big deal back in the day.
I'm not sure.
So
which
whatever.
one
So
this is.
again,
It's
you
limited to
guys can
500
decide.
pieces.
Like you have a friend who's a pilot. You have a guy who likes like funky watches, a little bit more aggressive. You have a square case from a brand that doesn't have a ton of history, but is honest in what it does for the most part. I think. Right. All right. What else we have? We have an Omega. So an Omega Aquaterra. So we could have went for a Seamaster. We could have went for a Speedmaster. But if you want something that's a little bit lower price point, if you want something that is well made and very versatile, so a watch somebody can wear all the time, Aquaterra is a good watch because it's often overlooked, right? So this is in between this is basically a dress style of their Seamaster, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's automatic movement, and you can find this watch for probably like $3,500 as well. So this is a great everyday watch. It's a good starter watch, and like that watch, if you spend like $3,000 for that watch, you're never going to get less than $2,000 for it. So it'll if you're selling it to somebody who's going to resell, but you can easily sell this on a private sale for what you paid for in a watch like this. So it's a great starter watch, but it's also a watch that can stay in your collection and kind of move.
It's also a good piece with a lot going on with the movement and all that dial the completion of the dial, but in a smaller package.